right, this is a little bit for Allie Emmett. There seems to be this dispute of black women doing what they want or doing what they will. In fact, there was this question that a sub asked me, talking about the Garvey movement, and this, that was in the 1920s, where black women wanted to have their own voice inside the Garvey movement, their own independent voice inside the Garvey movement. And so he asked me about it. And if you really wanted to know, I can actually look up the source for that he sent me. There's actually a book written by a woman about basically independent black women in the 20s in the Garvey movement. Even black women marched in the suffragette marches for the vote. So black women have always done what they wanted to do. So I looked at it. I looked into it, and I have some excerpts from the book, The Negro Family in America, from E. Franklin Frazier, who actually did a study of the history of the black family coming out of slavery. And that woke me up to the fact that black women, whether we like it or not, really have not changed all that much in 150 years and almost 200 years. They haven't really changed that much. To say that black women are compliant and they lived under patriarchy and they were submissive, maybe somewhere as individuals, but for the most part, no, they weren't. So I'm just going to read a few snippets that I took out of Frazier's book, The Negro Family in America. If you want the references, you can always email me. I can look them back up and actually give you the page numbers and shit like that. But let's read the first one. These women, talking about black women, had doubtless been schooled in self-reliance, and self-sufficiency during slavery. As a rule, the Negro woman as a wife or mother was the mistress of her cabin. And save for the interference of master or overseer, her wishes in regard to mating and family matters were paramount. Neither economic necessity, we say it again, neither economic necessity nor tradition had instilled in her the spirit of subordination to masculine authority. Emancipation only tended to confirm, in many cases, the spirit of self-sufficiency which slavery had taught. So even before we were emancipated, the cultural pattern of black women not submitting to masculine authority of her men was already there. In fact, I was actually in Kendra D's Hangout, and I actually put this quote into the chat, and she corrected me. She said it's not all masculine authority. If a black woman will submit to the authority of a white man, as this actual quote actually says, she corrected me. I have to bow down to a knowledge greater, but she will not submit to the authority of the black man, as she has been taught. So the fact that black women are just now doing what they want is utter bullshit. Let us continue. Only women accustomed to playing the dominant role in family and marriage relations, if we may regard the slaves as ever having been married, would have asserted themselves as a Negro woman in Mississippi did during the election of 1868. What he's saying, I should have showed the whole quote, but But they're saying in 1868 during the election, I do believe it was Lincoln. It might have been Lincoln, but or Johnson. I think it might have been Johnson, where they were going to reelect the president, and the women went against their, well, basically not only the white man's wishes but also the husband's wishes, because they used to wear the uh, the bills, the printed uh, post bills on their chest with the picture of the president against the wishes of their father, of their, not father but their husbands. And if the husbands took it and hid it or tore it up, they went to town and they got another one and still wore it in defiance of their husband. So the fact that black women do not do what they want to do, or they're just starting to do what they want, it's not true. It's always been true. Well, let us continue, Allie. Here's another one, because you think that black women not being married or black women being heads of household is new, and it is not. It is, of course, difficult to get a precise measure of the extent of these maternal households in the Negro population. The 1930 census showed a larger proportion of families with women heads among Negroes than among whites in both rural and urban areas. Moreover, it also appeared that in the cities a larger proportion of Negro families were under the authority of the woman than in rural areas. In rural non-farm areas of southern states, from 15 to 25% of the Negro families were without male heads. And where this comes into the fact, and it'd probably be interesting for me to actually go through. I actually did this. Um, go through the book and scroll down and go through the chapter. Um, if if the man can't provide, or the man can't sufficiently provide, then it's easier for the woman to do what? Even with her children, to put him out. Not that he abandoned her, not that he left her. It was easier for them to come to an agreement that he would leave. This is in the 1930s, but whereas in the rural South, since a man's labor, his strength and his labor was much more valued, she tended to keep a husband. And if she couldn't keep a husband, she got another husband, which is something that was said also in the book. There was a woman that had been married, quote unquote, married 3 times, and she was looking for a fourth husband to help her work her land. So even back then, as is now, the black family or the black male-female relationships are actually based on 2 things: labor or resources and sex, conjugal. This is something else he actually spoke about. So black women doing what they want, and how they want, or having multiple partners, or having multiple children by multiple men, is not a new concept. The book is replete with that. Here's my one of my favorite quotes out of the book, believe it or not, because it coincides with what Cola Booth said about maybe almost 10 years ago, when she said she'd rather be a white man's whore if the piece of gum at the bottom of a white man's shoe than be a black man's wife or a black man's whore, as she said it, a black man's wife, something like that. I have to look up the quote, but I suppose she got it from this because it's so similar. She said, when I first came here, I often heard mulatto women say that they would rather be a white man's concubine than a nigger's wife. The mulatto women and white men claimed that since the law did not allow them to marry, they only had one wife, and that was all right. In other words, she'd rather play second fiddle to the white man, or to the dominant class, than play wife to a black man. So the idea of, well, even though she's a mulatto, mulattoes are considered Negroes. And I'm certain that there's a lot of Negro women that they could have would have done the same thing. So this idea of swirling or playing second fiddle to a white man, that goes, that goes all the way back to Sojourner Truth and Katie Stanton. Katie Stanton said the same thing, that a black woman's place was behind her and next to the white man. So the black woman being the white man's concubine is not a new idea. Exactly suggested. But don't get it twisted. The white woman always thought that she was superior to the black woman. Let us continue. Here is um, partial proof about the matriarchy and the matriarchal pattern that still exists today. Because the father never had ownership or control of his own children. The dependence of the child upon the mother, who is the supreme authority in the household, get it? Who is the supreme authority in the household, often creates a solidarity of feeling and sentiment that makes daughters reluctant to leave home with their husbands and brings their sons back home from their wanderings. And during the World War, or the First World War, there's a lot of black soldiers that were sent away to camps, uh, boot camps, and their biggest gripe was they're separated from their mothers. Because basically in the Negro family, the father had no role. So the fact that black women were independent or just now becoming independent and just have become independent over the last 50 years is what I call bullshit. It's always been there. And this book was written in the 30s. This book was not written in the 1960s or the 1990s or the 2000s. This book was written in the 1930s with sources coming back all the way from slavery. And his book is full of footnotes of the sources that he used. He used all kinds of sources, books, magazines, newspapers, all kinds of things to get his information. Now, he's an elitist. Now, because I know Cerulean's actually going to say something about this. He was an elitist. He was a bourgeoisie. And he was paid by the University of Chicago to actually write this book. He actually got grants because his first book was The Negro Family in Chicago. Because he wrote that, they asked him to write a book about the Negro family in America. So this stuff, it has been checked, and the patterns are still here. Let us continue, Allie Emmett. Now, here's something that's kind of sad, but it is what it is. Without the assistance of a husband or a father, or the father of their children, these women were forced to return to the plow or the white man's kitchen in order to make a livelihood for their families. From that time to the present day, as we have seen in the preceding chapter, each generation of women following in the footsteps, get this, from that time to the present day, as we have seen in the preceding chapter, each generation of women following in the footsteps of their mothers has borne a large share of the support of the younger generations. Today in the rural sections of the South, especially on the remnants of the old Today, in the rural section of the South, especially on the remnants of the old plantations, one finds households where old grandmothers rule their daughters and grandchildren with matriarchal authority. Sometimes their authority dates back from the days following emancipation. The mothers on their part show equally strong attachment for their grown sons and daughters. The reason which mothers frequently give for not permitting their daughters to marry fathers of their illegitimate children is that they are unwilling to part with their daughters. No matter how long a wandering son or daughter has been away from home, mothers rejoice in their return. And if they hear that their children are sick, they will make great sacrifices to bring them back in order that they may have ministrations that only a mother can give. In other words, the attachment between mother and children is so strong that this is what forces the matriarchal pattern. The attachments don't aren't between father and children. One because of the history, because of the way this country is organized. Black men don't have enough wealth and power to force a quote unquote patriarchal pattern, which is something that Moynihan was trying to do when he wanted to give black men the bulk majority of the jobs, so that he could actually um, force the force black people into a patriarchal pattern, and out of the matriarchal pattern that they had well, back then was over 100 years. Now it's 150 because the civil rights or the affirmative action for black men didn't work for other reasons that I ain't gonna even get into right now. Black women and white women conspired to actually take the fruits of affirmative action and civil rights. But that is a tale for a different day. Continuing, their daughters still follow their footsteps. Their daughters still follow in their footsteps and bring their offspring to the maternal household. Then these mothers are elevated to the dignity of grandmothers, the position which gives them a particular authority in family relations and places upon them the responsibility for keeping kindred together. Allie, why do you think women loved by black women? Tyler Perry was the archetype of the matriarch in America and put it into a form of the elderly grandmother, which is the matriarch of the family. That's how come the grandmother has the say so over even the sons, over even the husbands. In most families, the mother, especially the grandmother, has the authority over the children and over the offspring, over the younger folks. The matriarchs or the women get together and they decide what's going to go on in the family, and they push the men to the outskirts. Happens in my family. When the children want to get something done, the first person they go to is the women. And then if the women can't handle it, then they go to the men. And they try to dictate to the men what's supposed to be done. And unless you get into a very patriarchal setting, say like the Nation of Islam, that's the way the black family works. So the black women not doing what she wants to do, even inside of a marriage of a black family setting, it's not true. Black women still run the household. Black women still run the family, which is another reason why the divorce rate is so high. I actually did a video on that, showing that the highest divorce rate is amongst black women. Lowest marriage rate, highest divorce rate. Lowest marriage rate, highest divorce rate. That's the way it's always, well, that's the way it has been since the 1960s, divorce rate. All the 1960s, really 1950s on up, basically it was give the black woman back her cabin so that the pattern could flourish, which is why a lot of your conservatives said that welfare or welfare as it was fitted back then was absolutely wrong for the black family. It pushed uh, the black family back into a very old ancient matriarchal pattern that was formed during slavery, where the state becomes the overseer or even the master. Now, I could show you a lot more. I actually could go through the book, show a lot of other pieces like the women, how they got on, not how they actually got support for their kids, and how they actually got welfare or the welfare of the time, and some of the same patterns that we still see in welfare offices today from black people are have been passed down from mother to daughter. So those people say, like those folks and women in Chicago that are on welfare, that stuff has been learned over the last 120 years. It's not new. So the fact that 2019 is the year of women doing what they want, you go back to 1919. You probably go back to 1819. But black women have always done what they want. They have never submitted to the authority of black men. And that spirit has been passed down from mother to daughter. And that's how come the feminists, suffragists and the feminists actually look toward black women as a guide or how to set up a matriarchy or something similar to where they can have sovereignty and authority over their men, which is much more difficult because white men are the one in power. White men are the ones that are in authority, whereas the black men have the state suppressing them and keeping them down. So what they can't not exercise their authority over their families, over their women, which is something that probably the white collective wants. But that is another story for a different day. But with that, I'm gonna jump off of here. This is BGS out, and I will see you guys on the next one. Peace.